And this was the message from God. You remember that. It was God who put John the Baptist in the womb of Elizabeth. That's why Mark 1 begins this way, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as it is written in Isaiah the prophet, "Behold, I send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way." My messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way. John the Baptist was God's messenger. Now, John the Baptist spoke for God. John the Baptist didn't conjure up his own message. He didn't find it in the tea leaves. He didn't read it in the stars. He received it from God. Testimony given to Jesus Christ by John the Baptist is not from man. Middle of verse 34. Not from man. He spoke for God. And consequently, Jesus says, "I say these things that you may be saved." The message of salvation can only come from heaven. He is a prophet sent from the Father. You believed he was a prophet. You believed he was God's messenger. Yet, you rejected what he said. You refused to believe in the one to whom he was pointing as a prophet of God. You rejected his popular baptism, which was preparing people for the arrival of Messiah. John the Baptist was bringing the message of salvation. That's why he refers to being saved. "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." And you received him. You bought into his ministry. Even the leaders came. Remember how they came? And John confronted them as a brood of vipers trying to escape divine wrath. Listen to verse 41 of John 10. Many came to him and were saying, "While John performed no sign, yet everything John said about this man was true." Everything John said about this man was true. Everything John said about Jesus was true. The people bought that. But John was a true prophet with a message from God. He was the lamp. Jesus was the light, phos, from which we get photography. Phos. John was the lamp, luknos, L-U-X, you could say N-O-S. John is not the phos. He's not the light. He's not the essence of light. He's the lamp. He's not a light on his own. He's just a lamp. You saw him as a lamp. You saw him reflecting a measure of the divine light. He was not just any lamp. He was a burning and shining lamp. A brilliant lamp. Beyond other lamps. And like moths to the flame, John the Baptist drew the Jews to himself. They knew he was a prophet. And then they're rebuked at the end of verse 35, "And you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light." You were willing to take everything you could get out of it. You were willing. And here the word is phos. It was the true light that was put in his lamp. And you basked in it for a season. Not long, for a season. You went out to John. You were baptized by John. The people were baptized by John. You believed his message. You listened to it. You went so far as to go under the water of the Jordan River, which was baptism reserved for proselyte non-Jews coming into Judaism. You essentially repented to some degree and agreed that you were no better than a proselyte and needed cleansing as symbolized in the baptism. That's how far you went. That's how much you bought into John. And by the way, probably at this time John was in prison or already dead. So the season was over. The season was over. He had had his head cut off and served on a platter at a drunken orgy in celebration of Herod's birthday. So Jesus says, I have witness from the Father, and the first witness from the Father is John the Baptist. And you believed he was a prophet. How can you receive the man? How can you call him a prophet, rejoice in him, and then reject the message he gave? How can you do that? The answer is you're unwilling. You're willing to do the work of your father, the devil. You're unwilling to believe. And then Jesus calls on a second witness. A second witness in verse 36. But the testimony which I have is greater than the testimony of John. Let's go to something even greater. Something greater. For the works which the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I do, testify about me that the Father has sent me. What are these works? Miracle. Miracle. This is first of all, the testimony of the prophet was the Father's first line of testimony. And then the testimony of the Son's miracles, the second line of the Father's testimony. The works that he did. And they bought into those too. Nicodemus, the ruler of the Jews, chapter 3, verse 1. A Pharisee named Nicodemus. The teacher of all teachers, verse 10. This man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we, plural, we know that you have come from God as a teacher, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. That's why they believed. Back in chapter 2, verse 23, many believed in his name, observing the signs which he was doing. They believed because of the signs. They believed John was a prophet. They believed Jesus was a teacher from God. As I read you in chapter 12, many Pharisees believed that he was a teacher from God because of the signs, but they loved the approval of men more than the approval of God, so they were unwilling to come to him. The miracles of Jesus made the case. And listen, it was the Father's power through the Spirit by which Jesus did those miracles. And that's what he says right here. Don't miss it. The testimony which I have is greater than the testimony of John, for the works which the Father has given me to accomplish. So here, not only is John the testimony of the Father, but even his miracles are the testimony of the Father. It is the Father who has determined that these are to be done. It is the Father's will, because he only does what the Father wills. Chapter 7, verse 31, many of the crowd believed in him. Why? Because they said, when the Christ comes, he will not perform more signs than those which this man has, will he? If he's not the Messiah, are we supposed to believe somebody's going to come and do more miracles than he has done? Impossible. So by the miracles, they affirmed that he was who he said he was, and they believed. Chapter 10, verse 25, Jesus answered them, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me, but you do not believe, because you're not of my sheep. You belong to your father, the devil. Verse 38, if I do them, though you do not believe, believe the works. Though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father. See, the works that he did was the Father in him doing the works. So that the miracles of Jesus are testimony from the Father. The chief priests, even in chapter 11, verse 47, and the Pharisees convened a council and said, what are we doing? This man is performing many signs. Many signs. It was crystal clear to everybody that he was doing miracles. As I've said many times, they weren't denied. Chapter 14, verse 11, believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. What's the proof? Believe me because of the works themselves. So it was the Father revealing to John the Baptist the truth that made John a witness for the Father. It was the Father in Christ doing the miracles that made the Son's miracles a witness also from the Father. And that is consistent through John's Gospel. In the 15th chapter, I'll just give you one more to think about, verse 24. If I had not done among them the works which no one else did, they would not have sinned. But now they have both seen and hated me and my Father as well. If you reject me, you reject my Father, because what I do is what my Father does in me. See him create wine and tell me he's not God. See him heal from a distance of 20 miles. A child near death and tell me he's not God. See him speak and a man 38 years infirm rises normal. Tell me he's not God. Hear him call dead people to life and tell me he's not God. See him touch deaf ears, blind eyes, leprous skin, and instantaneous wholeness results. And tell me this is not the Son of God. Watch him take 5 biscuits, as we'll see in chapter 6, and 2 fish. Feed 20,000 people. This is the incomparable evidence of his deity, and it is testimony from the Father. So let's go back again. Please notice verse 36. The works which the Father has given me to accomplish. These are the very works I do. And they testify about me that the Father has sent. What do you mean that the Father has given me to do? Well, we're talking about his incarnation, because he only did these works in his incarnation. So in his humiliation, he only did what the Father willed him to do. That is to say, he set aside the independent use of his divine prerogatives, which would always be in accord with the Father eternally, but he restricted the use of his attributes and his powers to only that which the Father gave him to do. And he did only what the Father willed him to do, as God had designed the plan to reveal his deity in the way that God had determined. I glorified you on earth, he says at the end of it all, having accomplished the work which you have given me to do. Everything Jesus said was what the Father wanted him to say. Everything that Jesus did was what the Father wanted him to do. He is saying that his works are the Father's testimony declaring who he is. The indictment is clear. You have acknowledged my works. You have believed in these works. Many believed, chapter 2. And again it says the Pharisees believed. The rulers believed. Many believed. There wasn't any escaping. But they followed the same pattern that they had followed with John. Yes, he's a prophet. Yes, we know the story of his miraculous birth because his parents were in the priesthood and were well known. Yes, we understand that he fulfills the prophecy of a voice crying in the wilderness of Isaiah. Yes, we go out to be prepared for the coming of the King. Yes, we affirm he's a prophet of God. No, we don't believe his message. Yes, we affirm your miracles. We affirm exactly what you've done. We see the signs. We can't imagine anything greater, anything more wonderful that anybody could ever show up and do anything beyond what you've done. Yes, we know that you do these things because God is with you. We get that, but we don't believe in you. Not savingly. We believe you're a teacher like we believe John was a prophet. We believe you're a miracle worker, which John was not. We don't believe you're the Messiah. We don't believe you're the Son of God, even though you have put it on display. So how does the Father give testimony? The Father gives testimony through the ministry of John the Baptist. The Father, which is the fulfillment of the promises of the prophet. The Father gives